Riot have just announced their changes to the rules, the promotion relegation system, the structure, the format of playoffs. A lot of things have changed for LCS, the League Championship Series in EU and NA, going into 2015. And so this is kind of like for the league, like a change log, like they do with patches. So I thought I'd have a rundown, kind of like pro players sometimes do with exactly that scenario. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the different things that have happened, and I'll kind of assess, like, was it a good change? How has it changed from before? Because some of these changes, I'll start out like this. Some of these changes are really good. I like a lot of them, actually. I think these are really good moves from Riot. Yes, I could add the caveat, as I often do in these scenarios, like a bunch of these things are things that people already did in esports, sometimes a decade ago, sometimes more ago. Other games already did it at the moment and showed that these things were viable or better, even in other areas and regions of League of Legends. So if it was up to me, there's a part of me that would say these things should have been in place in the past. But okay, even though that's true, they should have, I still got to say I'm glad that Riot's bringing them in now. This is a lot of these changes are things that I would like to see, and I'm glad that these changes are happening because I think they're going to improve the league and the way things happen. And so the first place we're going to start with this is with the promotion relegation, because here's one of the few areas that actually I don't like the change very much. So there's 10 teams in LCS, if you remember. The last place, the 10th place team, automatically gets relegated. So if they come 10th, no matter what happens, they automatically get relegated and kicked out the league. Now there's a level to which I think that's good, in as much as once you get down in the bottom 3, you can't just then dick around and be like, well, whatever, we're going out anyway. It's like, no, if you manage to just finish second from bottom, you still got a chance to stay in. So I like that to a degree. I can understand that logic. My problem is just as a stickler for like having logically sound reasons for doing something. If we had a league where after a few of these promotion relegations, we did literally get the 10 best teams in Europe and they were all in there. And let's imagine in my hypothetical world, the 10 best teams, even the 10th was a cut above the best challenger team. Well, according to the Riot system, the 10th best team would lose and come 10th, in theory, and would have to get put below a team that they actually are better than. Now, that is a problem. With that said, of all the things on this list, it's a fairly minor issue, and we can see how that plays out in the future and see how unfair or fair it does tend to be. I don't like it as a general, in like a computer simulation fashion like I described there, but okay, that's at least understandable because it is only 10th that it happens to. Now, likewise, the first place challenger team automatically gets promoted. In its own way, that has a positive. Like, for example, in the past, sometimes the strongest team in challenger would actually still lose. So that could, well, I can't remember if it actually has happened. Let me think. Has the strongest from challenger ever actually lost? I don't think so. It might have happened once, maybe. I don't think it actually has happened. But overall, it does feel like there were strong teams in Challenger who on most days would have gotten through, and on the rest of their play kind of proved that they were good enough, but just a bad day did fuck it up for them. So there's some degree it takes that out of it and adds a bit more challenge likewise from the other side to the Challenger scene, because now winning that top Challenger spot just gets you automatically in. It's not just about the seeding of that, and you can say, oh, well, that doesn't matter either. On both sides, it's the same sort of dynamic playing out for the bottom teams in LCS and the top teams in Challenger. Again, it's not my ideal system, but okay, like I'd rather the Challenger team still have to play to some degree, but this one I'm not as upset about. Now then, in terms of some things that we're going to break down later on, there's now circuit points, which will determine seeding for Worlds and the regional qualifiers. The winners of the summer season, in line with this, and the team with the most points over the season, the winners of the summer split, and the team that has the most points over the whole season using these circuit points, both automatically qualify for Worlds. I love that. That is fucking awesome. That's exactly what I want. Because here's the two things they've done there that are very smart. This is something I've suggested in the past, actually. You've combined the two aspects where, you know, we all used to get mad about the idea that imagine Black Sword scenario could happen where the team that won the first split then went bad, but then it automatically, in a circuit point system, might somehow have accrued enough points to then get into the world spot, yet they might not be very good by then, and a better team in the summer doesn't get in. But at the same time, you don't want to make it just where it's only about winning at the end of the summer, and you can be godlike for the rest of the time, but you have one bad series and somehow that can cost you. They've kind of fixed both those problems by, first of all, getting the hottest team, the team who's the one who's the best at the end of the summer. They're automatically getting through. That's great. There's one spot. We've got 3, remember, for these regions. The other spot we're going to give to the team that over the whole season in terms of these points has shown themselves to be the best, the most consistent, the most consistently high level. I love that. They automatically qualify. They can't get fucked. You've got two of the in different senses, these are the two best teams you've determined there. And then for the third spot, this is even better. Using those circuit points, which you determined the second seed with, we're now going to use those circuit points to decide who plays in the qualifier for the last spot, and then the order they play in. So I actually love this. This is one of the best moves Riot's made. And crucially, it's not unique, but they've taken a lot of different systems which all work differently and combined them. And I actually like the result of the combination better than some of those individual systems. This is one of the best things I think Riot's done. Now going forwards, the format of the league, there will be 5 matches per day, but teams will still only play once per day. Now that alone, I don't really like that. Like, my big problem with that is, in esports history, knowing how different games work, just playing once doesn't really give that good it doesn't really give a good sense for how good the team was on that day even, which might sound counterintuitive, but think of it this way. So the other day I watched an OGN game where SK Telecom played Najin EM Fire, and it was a best of 3. And in the first game, SK Telecom got wrecked. Najin EM Fire did really well, like Goon was going crazy on Zed. They'd wrecked them completely. So in game 2, SK Telecom came back, won like a comfortable game. Game 3, SK won like an emphatic game. Now imagine if they'd have only played that first game, how that would have affected things. Najin just wins outright, and SK gets nothing. Najin never has to then show its form over the rest of the game. Like maybe in game 2 they lose out, and then game 3 they don't even have a chance. And actually, the way that series played out, no, SKT was clearly the better team. Secondly, people would take such extreme conclusions from that match if it had been a best of 1. Think about this. Imagine the first game had been the only one that had been played. The conclusion would be like, wow, I guess SK isn't actually that good. Najin looked really strong. Imagine only game 2 had been played. Then people would be like, Najin shit. SKT just beat him without even using Faker. If game 3 had been played only, then people would have said, wow, Najin isn't even in the same league as SKT. Look at that. Faker just dummied on him. SKT just wrecked him. All 3 of those on their own would be wrong. But when you put them together, you get a much better sense of how good the teams were on that day, and they have a chance to warm up, adapt, play some more. In the history of esports, I know from knowing top competitors, there's a lot of great players hate the first game of the series. Like, the first game of the series is when they usually, like, they're warming up, they aren't fully into it, they haven't got their mind, they haven't felt the opponent out. Crucially, in tournaments, like big DreamHack type tournaments, a lot of them are really worried, pros, about the first game. That's the one where they might just go out to a nobody. Whereas if they've played the first group stage and then they go into the next match, by then they're rolling. And if they lose then, it's because they were just worse. So in general, I'd prefer some sort of a system, whether it's best of 2, best of 3, where you play more than one game, ideally against the same opponent on the day. So you're still only practicing for the one opponent, but you get more games and you get more out of it. I think that's just a better system. So in this particular case, this is another area where I don't like the change. They haven't really changed anything from the past. They haven't really... It's not like it's gotten worse than before, but I just wish they'd put that something in there. So maybe next season, next year they can do this, but I wish they'd go with something more there. Teams now only play 2 times a split instead of 4. Now on one hand, I like that in as much as it means that the seasons can be shorter. You're not having those ridiculous days, because I think they said now that you only play once a day, which is better. You're not having those retarded days. Crucially, there'll no super weeks now. You're not having a super week where you play 4 or 5 games. So you have to practice against 4 or 5 different opponents, which is impossible, by the way. You can do your best, but you'll never be as good as if you had to practice against 1 for that week. And secondly, you did have to play too many games. There were too many meaningless games that actually, first of all, bored me. I used to see that schedule of like, here are the 5 games coming up, and I'd be like, that fucking sucks, that's good, but I guess I'll just go for an hour and a half here, and there's one there, and like, there's no way I would have ever sat through all 5. I don't think I've ever sat through all 5. It was never possible with the combinations to have all 5 matches be that interesting to me. So I like it that there's less worthless games for sure. In terms of playing less games overall, the problem is the best of 1 aspect. If they changed it to best of 2, then I actually would have said, okay, even though you only play 18 games now instead of 28, actually I think that, because it was 28 because you're 8 teams, remember it's 10 teams now. Even though you only play the 18 games, so 10 less games overall, I would have said, okay, but since you play the same team overall, I don't mind that it's less. I still think you get enough, and it's still going to test who's good enough. That's fine. Overall, I guess I don't mind that change. That change is just a wash. We'll just put that out there. Now, in terms of what the regular seasons do, the first and second seed automatically get a bye in the playoffs for that split, right? That's not anything new. That was in every other LCS split. I don't actually like that. I've mentioned this before. First reason I don't like that as a move is because they're doing it to like give a benefit to the first and second seed, right? Here's a prize for finishing first or second. The problem is you already get an inherent benefit for being the first or second seed, which is the first or second seed in the playoffs. Secondly, you not only get a benefit, but by you being the first and second seed from the regular season, going to the playoffs, getting the seeding there, you punish the worst teams in the playoffs. That's a key point that Riot seems to miss every time. I know that this comes from like NFL or something, and they love American football. I don't give a fuck about American football. From what I've seen, I don't even like the system. I think it's quite a flawed system, and it seems to be based around a sport that's so physical. You can only really play best of ones. You have to have time off between all this, which doesn't apply to video games. We can play like best of 5 and still be quite vibrant and have a great form. I don't think it's necessary to apply like that. So in this particular scenario, I'd rather there wasn't a bye. So what I'd like is, overall, let me think how many teams go into the playoffs. I think they said, 6. Yeah, 6 teams out of the 10 go into the playoffs. So out of the 6, that's the problem there. I'll admit that's the problem. It's that the 6 is like that. So in my world, I guess we'd need 8 teams in the playoffs to make this work. What I would rather have is a standard like NBA type bracket on the conference. So I want the first place seed to play the 8th place team, and I want the second place seed to play the 7th place team on opposite sides of the bracket. Because crucially, first of all, it's already a massive advantage as the top 2 seeds to get the worst 2 teams in the playoffs as your first round. You're actually very likely to go forwards. Like in history in NBA, an 8th seed beating a number 1 seed happens very, very rarely. Like you can count on your hand almost the number of times it's happened in history. Secondly, crucially, it punishes those bad teams, the 7th and 8th seed. It's very unlikely they're going to get past. So finishing there is now, you can't even afford to do that. If you're in 6th place, you have to fight like an animal to make sure you stay in 6th or higher. You don't want to go to 7th or 8th because you're almost certainly going out before the semi-finals. In this particular scenario, the big problem is, by taking number 1 and 2 out and giving them the semis, you actually give a bonus to the bad teams. The teams who were in 5th and 6th in this world, but in my world would be 7th and 8th, are now playing easier opponents in the first round that they have a much better chance of upsetting. So the problem there in the regular season is it makes it not as big a deal as to whether you finish in 3rd place or you just finish in 4th place. If you finish in 4th place, you play the 5th best team. If you finish in 3rd place, you play the 6th best team. There's almost no difference there. Whereas the difference is, if you finish in 5th place, and now you get to play the 4th place team. Okay, that's not so bad. Finish in 6th place, you get the 3rd place team. Okay, that's great. But if you finish in 7th place in my world, you have to play the 2nd best team in the whole league, whereas 6th gets you only the 3rd. So that could be crucial. In that scenario, I don't like it. But whatever, we'll move past that. Again, that's another one I don't like. Aside from that, 4th place, 5th, 3rd place, 6th in the quarters. Had that the same as before. 8th and 9th play each other. Let me think. No, 8th and 9th play the 2nd and 3rd challenger teams to decide the LCS spots. And crucially, 8th place, as a benefit, gets to pick which of the 2 opponents they want. Now, 2 things there. One, I don't mind the aspect of them playing each other in that sense overall, if you had to use the system. I don't really like number 8 getting to pick, because they could just be stupid and spiteful and just pick the 2nd best challenger team just to be arseholes. Whereas, okay, so I just worked to become the 2nd best challenger team, and now they just get to fuck me for no reason, even though I did better than 3rd place. But now if the 8th place team knows they can beat me and just want to be dicks, they can just pick me and just fuck me over. So actually, I should have just finished it. You know what I mean? Like, the scenario is not that good in that scenario. Also, as a general principle, I actually preferred the expansion tournament type thing. I'd rather, if it was up to me, what I would do is the teams that drop out of LCS would just drop out, and they'd go into a tournament of its own where they were joined by the challenger teams, and they weren't just matched up directly. They played maybe double limb or something like that, or seeding overall, or round robin going into a bracket. In fact, Monty had a good idea on Twitter for that, where it was like a round robin that the top 4 go into a bracket, and then the 2 teams that make the final qualify automatically, and then there's a 3rd place match to get the final LCS spot. I think that's a really good system, because crucially there, you're making the teams that were the worst in LCS and the teams that are the best still prove it against all of the other teams involved, who really is the best out of them, and they get to go in. And I don't think you'd hear any complaints after that format, whereas there's a lot of wacky things can happen in this other format where you would hear complaints. Now going on, the playoffs are now 3 weeks long. The matches are each weekend, so you have like quarterfinals this weekend, semi-finals this weekend, finals this weekend. I love that. That's really good. Now, it is again a problem of the bye thing, because now the team that's going straight to the semis actually has to take like a week off of not playing properly, whereas the teams that are coming into them have played the week before and maybe figured some things out and gone forwards. That could be an issue. And the reason why I'll say that is because in Counter-Strike, we had an IEM system just like this, where the winners of the groups got to go to the semis In the 3 years they did this, so each time there was 2 teams went there, so 6 teams total went to these semis and got the advantage. In the 3 years that they ran this, those 6 teams never made the final. And part of it's because of this. In this system, it wasn't over a week. They only had like a day off. But even just having the day off actually was a competitive disadvantage to the teams that played and got better and improved as a team and got in and came in hot the next day. So overall, I don't like that overall, but I do love the 3 weeks aspect. That part I really like. So once you win your quarterfinal match, you have a whole week OGN style to practice for the next match and in theory, bring out your best. That's going to make better playoffs than we had in the past. I love that move. All the playoff series are best of 5. That was already the case this last summer split anyway, so I'm glad they kept that move, which always should have been there anyway. But okay, it's there now. You don't have to worry now. If in terms of teams who, let me think. Okay, so the last spot. Oh yeah, that's the thing. So the winner of the playoffs in the summer obviously gets the automatic qualification. Great move. The team with the most points over the whole season gets the automatic qualification. Now, if there's a tiebreaker involved, needed to decide who the second place seed overall is, as in the team with the most points, then the tiebreaker won't be a match. It will just be whoever got the most points out of the summer season. I like that as well, because again, you're giving a benefit to the summer season, but it's a way to tiebreak also, and you're probably deciding of the 2, which is hotter form now. I don't mind that. That's actually a pretty decent decision. I'd rather they just played if it was up to me, but okay. Of other decisions, that's probably the best you can get aside from playing. The last spot comes from the regional, and the regional winner will be the 3rd seed. So what's great there is still a chance to qualify, even if you're not the winner of the summer split and you don't have the most points overall. You still got a chance to qualify just from play. I like that. They combined a lot of my different systems that I like. I like a lot of the different factors of all these different systems, and the way they've combined them, I actually love it. Now the points breakdown is purposely set up so that you get a bit more points for the summer season than you do for the spring. So for example, you get first place in spring gets you 90 points. But actually, second place in summer gets you 90 points. So you get as much for coming second in summer as you do for winning the spring. So that the emphasis is still on summer, but spring can still get you points and still get you there. And if you're a great team that has a bad performance in summer, the spring points can still buoy you through and get you a good seed into the regional. That's great. Crucially, you get no points for coming 7th to 10th. I love that as well. You shouldn't, because otherwise that gives too much of a competitive advantage to teams who get into LCS, but might even lose every game and do nothing. But just because they were in the spring split, they get more points automatically for finishing last than some team that's mega in challenger, like a Cloud9 style, who comes in the summer and goes far. Like, I actually think that's a good move. In terms of the point breakdowns, you could argue all day over those. I think they're fine at the moment. They seem perfectly fine. Going into the regional now, because we've already qualified our summer winner. We've now figured out how we qualify the guy with the most points. How do we run the regional qualifier? Now, this I love. My favourite playoff system, believe it or not, is this system, which is the same. It's King of the Hill style, and it goes off seeding, and you seed it according to circuit points of the teams left. And basically, this is the system that they've used in the Korean regional qualifiers for the last few years, and crucially, they used to use it, and they still use it to this day, as the Pro League, as in the StarCraft Team League. That was always the playoff format. You'd play the regular season, then the first place, in theirs, they have the first place. Obviously, in ours, the winner and the one with the most points go through. So we'll just say first place in terms of teams left of circuit points. The first place would always go and be waiting in the final, and then the second place would be waiting in the next one, and third place, and then fourth and fifth would play each other. So that's what happens here. When we have all those points at the end of the summer split, 4th versus 5th in circuit points play each other. Winner of that match plays the team that was 3rd in circuit points out of the ones available. Winner of that match plays the team that was 2nd in circuit points available. Winner of that match plays the team that was 3rd. Oh, the winner of that match is the 3rd seed and gets to go to Worlds. Now, what I love about this is there's all these different ways to qualify, and it's like there's this huge gauntlet of ways you can get to Worlds that aren't just one match deciding the whole fate. That's actually really, really good. This is one of the best things I think that Riot have ever done in terms of making the league properly competitive in a way where it doesn't feel bullshit. And it feels like almost to a degree admittedly some of the seeding issues I said there in terms of the playoffs of splits, that's a bit problematic. Like, it doesn't actually motivate you on some of the games, but aside from regular season games, all the playoff games, all the splits overall, they really do matter in a certain way, and they even matter in terms of how you're going to end up getting to Worlds and what your route can be. I actually really like that. I think it's going to make some great storylines. So overall, in terms of if I had to give a grade to overall these, all of them as a whole, I'd probably say, see, I really like some of them, like having the regional thing and then having the guy who comes from most points gets it already. So, see, I'm really tempted to go for a high grade here, actually. But then again, I don't like the promotion relegation one's a bit tricky. I definitely don't like that the first and second seed get the bye. What else? I liked it pretty much everything else. Oh, I didn't like this best of one, so I can't give it too high. I think I'll say a B plus. B plus. So this is a strong grade, good grade. You didn't absolutely knock everything out of the park and get the A plus or the A or the A minus. Close to an A minus, but maybe the best of one one's the one that tipped me there. A B plus, I think, overall for this. These are great changes, the best Riot's ever done. I hope that this means that we're going to have similar changes and tweaks in future seasons, and we can get to a place where actually it'll be a sport that has a structure I like. Now listen, I still have some interesting ideas that are totally different from this, which I'll present in a different video, I think, sometime in the future, because I've had my own sense of a way you could do a circuit, which I don't think is going to be done because of the way they're sticking with the league structure. But within the confines of having to do a league structure, I do like a lot of these changes, and I think they're good.